All right, good morning, everybody. Hope everyone's doing great on this February 8th, 2022. Let's jump in. Let's talk about some Bitcoin here. Really, I wasn't even going to do a video just because we talked a few times yesterday and kind of went through the expectations. But, figured there were a few things I thought we would talk through here. So let's do just that. I didn't even want to start with this chart. Let's go over to this one real quick. So, we talked briefly about this pattern yesterday, and I kind of explained where I think that where this could very well be the market cycle and the way that we start closing out this section of the market. If we go ahead and compare these two charts again, let's just do this for the sake of discussion here. Essentially, we are in this part right here would be equivalent to this right here. All right, we're in this kind of inverse head and shoulders section of the move. That would be basically where this is a shoulder, this ends up being the head, and then we're going to form another shoulder right here. So chances are pretty good again, in order to match this, the pricing has to come down more or less to where it did prior on the other shoulder. So we've got a shoulder that came down all the way to about here at 39.5. My expectation is 39.5 is where we're going to find some ultimately some support there. The interesting component of that, though, is that it does put it back inside of this pattern, which it's not always a great sign. But the general concept is that once you've exited a pattern, if you go back into it, the assumption is that you will cascade all the way back into the bottom of the pattern. And if we're talking about this rising green channel here, the bottom of the pattern, oh, surprise, surprise, it actually lines up directly at that 39,303. Now, what I'll probably look for here when the time comes is something of it'll probably end up being some, potentially another bear trap or something where it looks like we're going to lose this and then it just rockets right back up the other side. Tough to say how that all plays out, but, nailed this pretty decently actually as far as the move to the upside. I kept saying, once we cleared, I think it was 39 or 41 or whatever. I said, all right, well, now we're looking at 43.5, 44.5, and then 47. Well, obviously we didn't make it to 47, but 45.5, boom, it nailed this bottom level right here, and now we're getting rejected. So we shall see how that plays out. There's a few things there as well that I'd point out to you, kind of high level stuff, but just for your own sake. So this is the RSI right here. It matches up reasonably well to the pricing action itself in that other screenshot. But basically, this line right here, this line at 60.3 approximately, this white line, essentially represents the bullish control territory. So, that it basically helps to identify if we can expect that there will be more upside. If this comes down and it finds support here, we're going to look for it to move back up to the upside. And then this line here, this big white line that is descending, is more or less. I mean, it's not lined up perfectly, but it's more or less a giant falling wedge. This being the bottom of it, you just can't compare these time frames. These are weekly versus daily, and et cetera. But the short version being that we could actually find support right here and make another upside push. My best guess is, though, that we'll come down here, put in a bearish retest here, and then start cascading down this way a little bit. Again, the market makers got to make it so not everybody's just sitting here knowing what's going to happen and preparing accordingly. So gotta have some fake outs here and there and some some nail biting moments. The other interesting component I wanted to point out on this particular screenshot is just this guy right here. So you've got these lines, and these are called moving averages. All these colored lines here. And these are lagging indicators. So basically, there's something called a death cross. So that would be when this red line crossed over the yellow line from the top. This was a death cross, and you can see that in fact the reason for it being called a death cross is because once it started coming across here, you've got this huge downside push, right? When the 21 crossed the 200 here, so the white line being the 21 moving average, the yellow line being the 200. When it crossed, you got a good move to the downside as well, right? Purple, that's the 100, that's the 80-day moving average, excuse me. You'll see that it had a very minimal impact. The blue, which is the 100-day moving average, still has yet to actually cross. However, that would make sense that when it hit here, it stopped the action a little bit because there's got to be some additional downside that comes out of this. Now, just for sake of comparison, we had a similar circumstance right back here, which is really what we've been talking about. Kind of comparing, when I said recently that we might see several weeks of slop and sideways action. This is why, because when we recently had the same thing happen, here you go. You got the 21 crossing, boom, ugly. You got the 50 moving average crossing, boom, ugly. Purple, the 80 moving average came through, boom, ugly. By the time the blue one came through, the 100 moving average, I mean, it had already been pushed down quite a bit, but if we compare the size of this, this move here to where we're at now, then it would make a great deal of sense that, again, that move may very well take it right back down into this region, which is, again, what we're expecting, or at least that I'm expecting at this point. Again, just looking at a chart, looking for the signals. Once Bitcoin gives those signals, we will make the appropriate moves from there. So that takes care of that, and that's really a huge part of what I wanted to just kind of show you there. Was what's going on, and some different things. Now I'm just going to touch on this 4-hour chart real quick, just kind of coming back to what I was talking about yesterday, how I expect it will just kind of move down in waves. Which is the best thing that we could possibly have happen, because what we want to see happen is this right here, this RSI. We need to see that cool off, but we don't want to see the price drastically pull back. What's the best way to do that? A nice slow bleed out. Now talking about moving averages, and I'll just do this real quick. Typically speaking, this right here, when the 50 moving average crosses the 200, normally that's called a golden cross. That's actually what you want to see on a chart, because typically that would mean that you're about to get a huge push to the upside. Again, these are lagging indicators. Simple fact of the matter is there's a strong chance that the move that was coming from this cross has already been factored into all of this move that took place. Whenever you don't get the big push from this golden cross here, typically what you're going to see is the pricing action is going to come down and test the 21-day moving average, and then it's going to relatively quickly fall through that, and again down into, and it's not going to happen immediately. There are several support and resistance zones, but you're going to start to see that this price action, what'll probably happen is bouncing off this yellow trend line here now, probably come up here, put in a bearish retest. um, you know, there are a few things that could happen here that could still make this go to the upside some more. I don't know that that's going to be the case or not. A lot of times you might expect that you're going to make your way all the way to a retracement level, which is this 0.5. In this case, who knows if we make it there before we get rejected? We can get rejected here just as easily. But all that being stated, as long as we bounce around in this and we hold this trend line, simple fact of the matter is we'll probably get another push up here or even here. It's once we start losing, this trend line, then this support resistance, we lose this trend line, we lose this trend line, we lose this support, we lose this trend line, this support, this trend line, this support. It's as we start to cascade our way down. This isn't going to just happen immediately, or at least it shouldn't. So again, I'm expecting we're probably going to have something that flows along the lines of this. Let's get you. Maybe we do get a bounce here, we get a bounce there. Now we lost that. Oh, now we're going to come up, retest. Oh, now we're done there, retest. And just constantly, retesting. So again, don't expect that this stuff's going to play out overnight. It never does. I mean, it's just not never, but almost never does. And then eventually we get something that maybe looks like that. So anyway, long story short, that's kind of what I've got in mind here as far as where we're at, what's happening. We'll make plays along the way. I don't necessarily see a complete need in waiting till we get down here. We can make some short-term plays while it's bouncing. And then that brings me to one point. We actually made a real nice short play yesterday that's up about 30% last I looked. But the last thing I wanted to point out to you, and this is part of what helps Mateo and I determine Matt and I determine when we're going to make some trades is this chart right here. And I'll just again zoom in on the action. So this is Bitcoin dominance, and it basically is just an indication of how much of the market Bitcoin's making up versus everything else. Long story short on this one, and then I'll wrap up this video. Long story short on this, when this thing is trending in the upward direction, that is bad for altcoins, especially if Bitcoin is pulling back, which you'll see that pretty well coincides with this move right here. If we come back over here, this was the move that gave Bitcoin all of that, that basically got Bitcoin out of the gutter, right? This move right here coincides with the big start that Bitcoin had the other day. It was once it hit here and it retraced for that next 8 hours that the altcoins started to move, and that's where ultimately a big portion. Then this is weekend trading right here, so you can see the dates here. I mean, this was Thursday going into Friday, boom. Then we got some good action here, and as you go along, green was bad for altcoins in general. Red was good for them. But yeah, I mean, this is part of it right here. Just kind of wanted to show you this so you can kind of understand some more about how it is that we understand this market and what makes it so that way we can actually you know generate returns for everybody, ourselves included, obviously. But yeah, I think that pretty well does it. I wanted to keep it brief. I'm not always great at that, so I appreciate you taking a few minutes to listen. Hopefully, these knowledge drops are useful to everybody, and look forward to catching up with you again tomorrow.